Okay. I think that it is perfect time for us. We can start. We can discuss about our subject. And I have one wishes for today. I'm dreaming about safety and meaningful time for us for the next 3 hours. Because it is our assumption to spend together 3 hours with our presentation and maybe with small discussion on the end of our meeting, okay? Officially, my name is Hubert Kaszyński. I represent the Sociology Institute, Jagiellonian University, and I'm so glad it is an honor for me to officially open our session. And when I am thinking what will be the focus of our discussion, I believe that we try to discuss about the human values. But the question is, what kind of value will we update? I'm not sure. And is the reason why I would like to propose you for the end of our meeting, come back to the open space and try to share the feelings, the ideas, maybe the, new concept, without a hard discussion, but only for shared emotional aspect after our presentation. I believe that will be plus minus about the 20 minutes. Now I think it's a very important moment because I would like to introduce the members of our meeting, and I would like to start from Anna, Dr. Anna Podczas from Psychology Institute. It's a pleasure for me that you are here and you represent the individual perspective for our subject towards trauma-informed organization in behavior in crisis land.
Thank you.
Anya, thanks that you are here. Dear Jakub, Dr. Jakub represents the Department of the Law and Administration in the Jagiellonian University as a quite different perspective. And Katarzyna Ornacka, Olga Maciejewska, Julia Pawlikowska, and I, we represent the sociological perspective, but I think that inside it's more complicated because we have a little bit different background. For you, Kasia, and for me, as the social work and the sociology is the background. For Julia, I think the sociology and social work, and for Olga Maciejewska, in the center is pedagogic perspective and social work. And I think that here we are in the room and we have a really different perspective for our subject. But what is much more important, that I will believe that we establish a good connection, online connection with our special guest. And the first, our guest is Dr. Lee Greenblatt Kimron from Israel. And I know that Dr. Lee is in the connection with us in this moment, and I believe that it will be possible for whole the time of our meeting. And the second guest, we are waiting for Karina Melnik from Ukrainian and especially from the region Chmielnicki. And I believe that will be possible to organize round the table, not only in Poland, but in Israel and in Ukraine. I believe, once again, that it will be for us safety and meaningful time. That's right. There's a personal context of our meeting, and I would like to share few information about the institutional aspect of our meetings. Once again, in the center, because we are rather from the Sociology Institute, and one element that in Sociology Institute we established more than 35 years ago, established a research focus on social work. And it is the reason why a lot of the years we are part of the Polish Association of Social Work School. But we're running the research and we try to build a good education level, and in the same way we try to be a part of the European families, members of social work school. And for today, we have a specific support for European Association of School of Social Work. And I would like to stress that for me is a great honor to have a support from the board of the European Association, because thanks to the support, we have a possibility to be together and organize our meeting. We have a small activity inside the European Association. And the title of our small group is Holocaust for Contemporary Clinical Social Work. I will be back next few minutes about the more details about the SIG, but for today and for our discussion, I think there's very good axiological background for our discussion, I believe. And come back to our local concept. I think there's a foundation of our research activity is a Behaviour in Crisis Lab, is a part of the Excellence Program, Excellence Research, Excellence University, and our regular university take part, and we try to do something valuable, not only on the axiological, educational level, but we would like to be involved in the international perspective of the research. It's a very important Behaviour in Crisis Lab. And the small organization, really local from the Krakow, exists more than 10 years. It's an institute for therapy and the social education. And the tradition of our small organization is to have a lesson from the people who suffer from deep mental health disorders. It's a concept of phenomenological perspective for the individual experience. I think that is important for us. And our host for today, I would like to inform you, maybe for you it's not clear, but maybe for our guests it's not clear, that we are in the Center for Academic Support. And I'm so glad, it's a really honor that everything is working, and I would like to stress your support. Thanks a lot. Not only in this moment, but I believe that you stay with us longer, okay? Thanks once again. Okay, it's about the institutional perspective, the structure of our meeting. And come back to the program. As you see, we create 4 areas about our interest. And the title of the first is Difficult Heritage. The second, Fair Response Practice. Next, Humanitarian Disasters. And the last one is a little bit secret, name Healthy SOAR. And maybe will be easier to understand after the presentation by Kasia Ornacka. But you have to wait, because it's the last presentation. But I think that please stay with us, because it's important to understand healthy SOAR is some kind of the secret inside. It's a structure of our meetings, and as you see, every areas have a individual small presentation prepared by our guest from here and from online. And I think that we have for each of presentation about the 20 minutes, but without the stress. We have to be relaxed, because the subject of our meeting is really much more important. Okay, introduction, and I'm looking for my notes, and let me share the basic information about the special interest group of European Association of Social Work Schools. Once again, the name, the Holocaust Heritage for Contemporary Clinical Social Work. And it's a quite new initiative. We established our SIG. Now I can say that before the wars, before the Ukrainian war, before the situation in the war in Israel, we tried to looking for the Holocaust heritage and try to understand what kind of values, what kind of detailed solution we can take for this big lesson of the humanitarian catastrophe, one side, and the second side, some kind of the heroic attitudes. But I would like in this moment to stress that in this moment we have 9 schools on the board and 3 universities from Poland, Jagiellonian University, University from Łódź, and the next from the city Olsztyn, Warmia-Mazury University. The next very important is located in Czech Republic, in Ichlawa. It's a small school, polytechnics, and in this moment I would like to come back to the leader of the group, Olga Klepaczkova from Ichlawa. Olga, best regards from me and from our guest. In this moment, for Olga, it was not possible to be with us, but I believe that maybe she come back to us and see the movie and come back from Israel, maybe once again to Israel, and we established a free relation with 3 different schools, universities. The first one in Haifa University, and please, sorry, but for me it's Haifa University is a Professor Pnina Ron, regards Pnina. Maybe in the future we can meet together. And the second relation, absolutely important, is Dr. Lee and the Ariel University. And today we have a special occasion to have a lecture by Dr. Lee. And the last one is a university in Jerusalem, is the Hebrew University. And yeah, it's our partners from Israel. And the one very old school, because I'm looking for the Olga, is a long story to have a relation with the Evangelische Hochschule in Berlin. Yeah, it's our partners, and I will come back to Evangelische Hochschule in Berlin. And absolutely exotic from our perspective from Europe, we have the relation in the United States and Georgian in Athens, and one schools working with us in the concept of not only about the Holocaust, but larger about the eugenic culture, about the sources of actual situation. Yeah, for me it was very important to present the information, the basic information about the school. And now, once again, warm regardings for individuals who represent schools from different countries. I'm very obligated that you are with us, and I have a power to do something valuable for the research, for education. It was about the SIG. Of course, we have a few focus, few objectives, but for today, the second point is very important. Social work during the Holocaust as a sources of knowledge and inspiration for contemporary practice. And now I have a problem, because when I am thinking about the situation in Ukraine, when I am thinking about situation in Israel, I think that it's not the time to discuss about the history. Yeah, but please remember, it's some kind of the motto as the last sentence from my side. The sentence, a few sentences from the first by Yehuda Bauer, is a professor from Hebrew University, as an absolutely top of the top expert about the research in the Holocaust subject. And the one sentence, the Holocaust was the worst single case of genocide in history of humankind, is a specific aspect, but a little bit in opposite. Our Polish sociologist Zygmunt Bauman said that the mechanisms of modernity that lead to the Holocaust are still foundation of our society. And I think, once again, that's true. And we see in the dramatic situation actual in the world what was the intuition of Professor Bauman. Okay, come back to the program. It was my introduction. And when I see the program on the screen, is there will be the first very important lecture prepared by Olga Maciejewska and Julia Pawlikowska. Luleuci. I'm so sorry. It's a stress here, Julia. But I think for beginning we can change the presentation, okay? Because it's the end of my presentation, and then I will have to wait for your part of the lecture. But for the beginning, I'm not sure, but I think, dear Olga, that more than 10 years ago, we organized the first meeting with our colleagues from Berlin, once again from Evangelische Hochschule, and we said, okay, we take dear professor, we take the students from the Berlin and organize for you axiological walk. I remember it was the place, it was the walk on the area on former ghetto in Krakow. It was a beginning. It was a before the sick. And during, more than 10 years. And if I am thinking about our impact for education in Sociology Institute, I think that's about, I'm not sure, Olga, correct me, but I think that more than 400 students take part in our education and discuss about the Holocaust, discuss about the difficult heritage place and how to use to as a specific element to educational. Okay? I'm very interested in a presentation. Please, it's a secret things to change the slides and good luck.
Thank you very much. So together today with Julia, we will present you some basic reflections about axiological education in a very specific area, specific place in Krakow. And our speech is based on our research and educational experiences and activities in the space of former labor and concentration camp Płaszów in Krakow. And the most important part of our speech and of our research is the very complex and difficult issue of responsibility. And Julia will tell later more about this aspect. In this context, we can say that the most promising, the most important method of teaching and research is axiological education because it provides face-to-face contact, it provides first-hand knowledge and also direct experiences. And the starting point of our speech, our presentation is the history of Karl Płaszów. So now I will tell you a few words about it. On the photos, you will see some historical photos of Karl Płaszów. The German Nazi labor and concentration camp Płaszów was established in October 1942. What is very important, it was established on the ground of two Jewish cemeteries in Krakow, in districts known as Wola Duchacka and Podgórze, so this Płaszów was some kind of conventional name. This is the first element that distinguishes Karl Płaszów from other camps, other places like that in Europe, in the world. So the desecration of Jewish culture, the Jewish cemeteries, by the prisoners themselves, because they were forced to destroy the tombstones on this area. Płaszów was created, designed as a forced labor and then concentration camp, above all for the Jews from Krakow ghetto. And it was a turning point in the history of Płaszów. So the resettlement of about 8,000 people from Krakow ghetto on March 1943. It was the March 13 and 14, very important dates for Krakow, for Krakowian people. The second group were the people arrested during the street roundups in Krakow. Płaszów was also a camp for educational camp for Poles, and also for Jews who survived from the ghettos near Krakow. So Bochnia, Tarnów, for example, Rzeszów, Przemyśl, and from concentration camp in Szebnia. What is very important, in January 1944, this camp was reorganized to the concentration camp, so Konzentrationslager Płaszów by Krakow. And at the peak of camp organization, it was mid-1944. More than 20,000 people were imprisoned there. And about 200 buildings, structures were erected there. So barracks for the prisoners, also camp infrastructure buildings, and houses for the camp staff. Another very important element or factor very specific to Karl Plaszow was the existence of Kinderheim. It was a children's home because almost no other camp had a separate section for the children. On the beginning, children stayed in the barracks unlawfully with their parents, but later they were moved by force to this special area in the space of camp. Kinderheim existed until May 14, 1944, also very important date for the history of Płaszów and for Kraków, I think. On this day, all the children were transferred to Karl Auschwitz to be killed. According to the estimates, more than 35,000 people were imprisoned in Karl Plaszow, and about 6,000 people were killed there. All the bodies of the prisoners, of the murdered, were burned, and the ashes were scattered in the area of the Karl Plaszow. And this is why we talk about the area of Karl Plaszow as a great cemetery. To hide the crimes, the administration of Karl Plaszow decided to destroy all the buildings, everything what was in the area of the camp, and deport the prisoners to other camps in Germany, such as Mauthausen, Ravensbrück, or Grossrosen. And to this day, this area is difficult and very, very special space. As you can see on this photo and the next photos, this is open green space, the space of recreation area, but at the same time it's also place of remembrance and some ideas of commemoration. And we can see clear ambivalence of this space. This is for us. Not only the research challenge, but also the practical one. It's connected with everyday life of the inhabitants, of people who, as you can see on this photo, are living really close to the borders of Karl Plaszow, former Karl Plaszow. And I think that years of our research, educational work give us the right to say that to understand this space, the specific of this space, the understanding of this space is possible only when we have relation, when you have contact with people who really live next to the space, who are inhabitants, and also for the second group, so the people who really are users of this post-camp space. And more about education, about research will say Julia.
Yeah, because like Olga mentioned on the beginning of her presentation, we first of all would like to talk about education on this area, and this is what we are doing nowadays. So I think it's important to tell something more about that, what we are actually doing. A great part of our research is education. That's why it's also important for us to start the main part of our speech from this point. Running the course is making great impact for mentioned research, not only because of students are conducting research with us, but also because of students' education indeed and education in general. I mean, in social point of view. Transferring of knowledge, discussion, developing soft skills, helping students growing their awareness in this topic. Course which we are running has a form of research seminar, so it's not like a classic lecture, but there is like a lot of space for discussion and making this field research. During our course, we are showing students history of Karl Plaszow, like Olga mentioned already, making some workshop to try encourage them to answer of their hard moral, ethical questions in connection to this area. So I think it's very important. As we mentioned, we are running this course in Jagiellonian University Institute of Sociology from 2019 till present, and who actually can join. All students can join from Institute of Sociology. There are small groups, like 15 to 17 students, And yeah, it's on a level of bachelor as well as a master degree. So all students are welcome. Main topic of discussion in our on our classes, first of all, is recognizing the context of the planned research which we are conducting, but especially the social one. We are always giving opportunity students to recognize this topic by themselves. Of course, also preparing a research tool. We have some tool to conducting interviews, to making research, but we are trying to also give them space to create this tool by themselves from the scratch. So it's good workshop for them to do it. Testing the tool through pilot studies as well. They have opportunity to test by themselves. Also preparing, implementing educational project one of the year, because not always is the same kind of, let's say, semester when we are always doing the same. Sometimes for pass exam, let's say pass this course which we are running, there are like different kind of activities they have to do to pass the course. So one year they were asked to make educational projects. So one group of students, for example, they created a film on the area of Karl Plaszów, how they feel about this space. It's very nice. Maybe we will have opportunity to link it somewhere, and you can see they job, very good job. Of course, they are conducting research as well, both qualitative and quantitative, and on the end, they analyzing the result of research conducted so far. About key result of education, because of course, when we are talking about education, it's nice to also talk about achievement and what we actually achieve after running and doing this education for our students. And for sure, it's something what we realize that we achieve during this education, ability to actually notice specific of Karl Plaszów. How much is different from the other places with similar history, like Auschwitz or Brzezinka, how much is different? Also, what is very important from my perspective as an educator, we identify problem with talking about Holocaust in general. Students claim that they actually struggle with finding like appropriate language for such a discussion. They are not sure what is political correctly. They feel uncomfortable a bit with this topic because they never know what is the right approach in such a discussion. Therefore, crucial for us from the social point of view is the fact that students feel much more confident with talking about this topic, Holocaust in general, after this course. They are also much more confident about talking about relationship between Jewish and Polish people in general as well. In this point, we are using book written by Polish author Leociak, Młyny Boże. He is describing history and relationship between Jewish and Polish people a long time ago and a long time before also war, how it was. So students can have some also knowledge about indeed only relationship between Polish and Jewish people, how it was. And also not only this political corrective version, which is very often presented by authority, by media. So they have opportunity to open their mind a bit about this topic. Can go to another slide. Here are like some key theoretical bases which we are touching. I mentioned about Leociak already and Młyny Boże. Of course, we are also using theory of Sharon MacDonald. She created theory about difficult heritage. When we think about heritage, it's something what we are proud of, we want to talk about, we want to show the world. But we have to remember that there is also heritage which is connected with something not we are proud of, not something what we want to show and show off. So we realize that area of former concentration camp, Karl Plaszów, definitely is difficult heritage area. That's why we are also touching this topic. About the rest, I will come back later. About methodology, as Olga mentioned already, we are using axiological walk as our main, let's say, factor in both studies, research study, but in education. And we organize these axiological walks around the former camps, and we see this as the most important part of education. We are taking students to area of former concentration camp. We are walking through crucial points and reading pieces of a notebook written by former prisoner Józef Bał, and we are including his memory of the time when concentration camp was existing. This time for students, I think it's a time to get to know the space, but not only from historical point of view. We have to remember we are not historic, we are sociologists. So it's not about talk only about historical point of view, but first of all, emotional point of view. Also, this is a great space to make a reflection, answer this hard ethical question, how nowadays this space should look like and how should be used. But also, it's time for students to prepare actually field study and make some observation before conducting interviews. Of course, the great part of our research are also in-depth interviews with residents. We managed to make already 60 of them, so it's quite a good amount. But following Oleg, which is very important researcher in field of memory studies, we need to remember that using only interview, it's very risky to have a trap of only collected memory. There is a collected memory following Oleg and collective memory. So collected memory is something what we are taking from people, like a private story, person by person. So I'm talking about my childhood, another person is talking about his or her childhood, Katarzyna will talk about childhood, Anna will talk about childhood. It doesn't mean that we are gonna have all vision about childhood in general and we can have some theory about childhood. No, it's only collected memories of your childhood. So we are trying to achieve collective memory, so something what is more general, some theory which is more general. And Oleg always was emphasized that to achieve this point, of course we can run in deep interview, but also we have to add research of some institutional form of memorizing stuffs and institutional activities, which are very often led by authority, government, people who say us what we should remember, how we should remember, and so on. So this is very important, and this is also what we are checking in our research. This is part of our research. We study institutions focused on memorizing Kyle Plaszów. So it's kind of something plus adding in our research. Why we are doing this? Motivation of conducting this research. The starting point of for actually initiate research in Kyle Plaszów was recognize the community living around this area. Because field of our interest in general was always mental health, trauma, working with group with difficult heritage. When we started our axiological work, we had actually impression that this local community can be interesting group, and we wanted to find out more about their relationship with the space, which is at the same time the backyard and the former concentration camp, which is kind of controversial. We started cooperation with Krakowian Museum, which organized public consultation with local community. And that's how actually we started making open dialogue with inhabitants. And this is what was like touch points and getting in touch with people living around. About our key result, to sum up a bit our research briefly about some of our key results. We kind of, I think, open discussion about potential co-responsibility for Holocaust. I know that this topic is not easy and in Poland meet a lot of controversial, but I think we step by step are getting people more familiar with this not popular perspective about co-responsibility for what happened in Poland. This is what actually came up with our research, is huge unclearness who should take responsibility for the space. Despite the fact that people declare responsibility, in practice, they don't undertake any action in connection to commemorate the space. Also, they do not have clear vision how mention, commemorate should look like as well. Residents of this area are not identify themselves as a part of a local community, but at the same time, they recognize existing one. Group of people living around area of former concentration camp, which are against to creation a memorial institution, for example, museum. Being in this kind of opposition is kind of glue for this local community, in our opinion. So, for sure, we are dealing with peculiar example of ambivalent conflict zone. For inhabitants, the process of fighting for the right to this space and the responsibility for this may now be more important than in post-camp area itself. It has started to characterize them and to bind them together, kind of. When I was conducting one walk with my family, like privately, on Kyle Plaszów, when I mentioned about kind of co-responsibility, my aunt, I remember she told me like, but what you are talking about? What co-responsibility? Why you are talking about responsibility Polish people for such a event, for such a stuffs happened? And I realized then how much people treat responsibility as looking for someone who is guilty for this, and it's not the same thing. And this is something what came up, like responsibility and finding guilty person is not the same thing, but still living there, using this area every day by inhabitants, still is connected with taking responsibility for this space. They have to take responsibility for this space in some kind of way, not to admit that they are guilty of events had happened there, but just in meaning like they have to accept it happened. They have to agree with it, and they have to deal with it, and think what they can do about it, and how they can commemorate, or how they can find themselves in this space and take part in making commemoration of this space. We thought about organize actually meeting with people, local community living there, and to try to make open dialogue with them, and also involve them also in kind of this memory process. They could be guide for people. They could be people who are making workshop for another people, how it is living there around, how they were using this space, how they were taking care of this space, because they used to take care of this space as well after war finished. And for this, we can see big space for social worker who can be involved in such a dialogue. They can be mediator between local community and city, which has a task to create institution of memory in this place. And finishing our presentation, I always finish my presentation with this question, which we still didn't answer ourselves, rhetorical question: why it is so difficult to take responsibility for such a difficult heritage? Maybe you will have some idea and you will answer us.
Yeah, it's a photo. Great, Olga, Julia. It was really perfect. I'm impressed about your presentation. Of course, I'm interested about the opinion by Professor Leociak, for instance, when you are discuss about the responsibility, as nearly to my perspective, how we try to should discuss about responsibility for the Holocaust, was again so thanks. But only one sentence to Olga and to Julia, but especially to Julia. Thanks a lot, especially you, because you spent, I tried to define during your presentation, so sorry, you spent with our students about more than 300 hours as a voluntaries. And thanks in the name of the students, because we tried to the best to prepare the people for potential the crisis and how to take responsibility for maybe the humanistic disasters. But yeah, and I think that thanks for your input.
Yeah, I wanted to mention and actually relate what you say on the beginning, that maybe it's not the best time to talk about that. No, it is the best time to talk about that. And I know about that from the perspective of being with students and how much they don't know how to talk about this kind of stuff, how much they can't find proper language to do it. So this is the best time to talk with students about that, what is going on the world in general.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Okay, and we can make another step, because I see that Dr. Lee is ready.
Professor Herbert, I apologize if I missed something here. Missiles were being fired in Israel, so I missed the end of your lecture because I had to run for shelter. So if you called me and I wasn't here, that is the reason. But I was enjoying the lecture until the moment that I had to run. So if you called me and I wasn't here, that's what happened.
Okay, we hope you are safe.
Yeah, we hope.
And so, well, as I say, missiles were just fired at us and we had to run for shelter. So if I suddenly get up and disappear, that is the reason, okay?
We understand so perfect, and from my side, only one sentence from beginning, okay? Because we try to build a common lecture, common presentation, you, I, and Karina Melnik, but for beginning, only one sentence. That for me, it was very clear after the COVID time and after the Russian aggression against the Ukrainians and the mass migration to Poland, that we have redefined our concept, our understanding of social work profession. And it was once again absolutely clear for me that I have to be open for the traditional of Israel, last 70 years, when you start to establish a state of Israel. And of course, be open for transmission of intergeneration trauma. And we start thinking that the social work, it's not only a burnout problem, but in the center is a problem with secondary trauma. It's a problem with the shared trauma during an absolutely dramatic, common traumatic reality. And I think that I found a lot of researchers in Israel. I meet last 3 years a lot of the professionalists, but in the center, I met you, dear Dr. Lee, and it was absolutely so great present. I don't know, from God, I think, that we have a relation. And it's only for beginning. I know that in this time is absolutely extremely hard situation to do the lecture. We are open. We are for you.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Professor Herbert for inviting me, for our friendship, for our work together, for our collaboration. For me, it's a pleasure too, Professor Herbert. And I think Professor Herbert knows that the only reason that I actually managed to get myself here under the circumstances that I'm in at the moment is due to our collaboration. Olga and Julia, it's so great to see you again. We met in Milan, and I'm really, as I told you back then, I loved listening to you, and I loved listening to you now. While you were talking, up to the point where I had to run to a shelter because missiles were being fired at us. I kept thinking, you're talking about heritage and trauma, and I'm coming from a completely different point, because what I'm going to discuss is not something. In fact, when Professor Herbert asked me to give this lecture months ago, it was all planned and I knew what I was going to say. We discussed it. We met in Israel together. And I knew what I was going to discuss, but all of that, as I said to Professor Herbert yesterday, is not relevant because after what's happening now. So that's just an introduction. So Olga, Julia, thank you very much. I really enjoyed seeing you again. Should I share my screen, Professor Herbert? Okay, please let me know if you can see it properly. Can you see? Okay. So Professor Herbert invited me to talk about first response practice, social work, and secondary trauma. I don't think either of us realized how relevant the topic would be when he invited me. So let me see why it's not moving. Okay. Because as I hope you know, I hope the world knows that on Saturday morning, for me, it started at 6:30. I was sleeping. I got woken up. Saturday, the 7th of October, 2023. I look at that date and I've got cold shivers. Hamas terrorists fired a huge barrage of missiles and sirens sounded across Israel. We're used to it. I don't live in the south of the country, but even not in the south, we're used to it. But there was something about that morning, about the amount of missiles that were coming, that we were confused. I think that's the best way I could describe it. But we had no idea what was happening to our brothers and sisters down south. Because as they were firing these rockets at us, and we were all scrambling for shelter, just as I did a few minutes ago, and unfortunately missed the end of your lecture, they were invading the southern areas of the country violently, brutally, murdering, burning, raping, beheading babies, kidnapping entire families, murdering half the family, kidnapping the other half. We're talking about Holocaust heritage. I think we can see similarities here. Families, it was 6:30 in the morning, families were sleeping. They got woken up to absolute horror. There was a rave, a dance party, a rave of, I'm not sure of the exact number because somehow it's in Israel, we're not sure of numbers because they keep changing, they keep getting bigger. But approximately, I'm not going to sign on the number, 3,000 young adults who were at a rave. What is a rave party? It's a party for dancing for freedom, for peace dancers who were dancing the whole night, who were happy. The sirens came, they started looking for shelter, and they got massacred. They got murdered. I'm sorry for the horrific details, but it has to be told what happened. Women were raped on their dead friends' bodies and either murdered or kidnapped afterwards. Young adults who were looking for shelter were in bomb shelters. We've got bomb shelters in Israel due to our reality. And the Hamas terrorists threw grenades into the bomb shelters. I think you can't understand this until you're not exposed to some of the pictures, which unfortunately Hamas gave us no choice. The Hamas terrorists, because they showed the pictures, they took it on live. They took families' phones and they filmed it live on the Facebook so that their families could watch their families being brutally murdered. The numbers keep escalating, as I said, so please don't quote me on the numbers that I'm giving. The latest numbers that I've seen were on that morning of Saturday, 1,400 Israelis were murdered. Again, please do not quote me because the numbers always seem to be changing. Around approximately 40,000, I can't even get the numbers, 40,000 were injured. And what we know of today are around, again, approximately, because we don't know how many, 220 Israelis are being held hostage in Gaza. We don't know the numbers because we've also got body bags that still haven't been accounted for, as the bodies are so badly burnt that they're unable to put the pieces together. the kidnapped, the murdered include young babies who were beheaded, young children. So now I'm talking about kidnapped, who have been held hostage, young babies, young children, teenagers, women, older adults, men who are sick and who need medication, and even Holocaust survivors. You were just talking about Holocaust survivors earlier. Even Holocaust survivors are now in what I'm quoting, what they've been calling spider webs of tunnels in Gaza. This was the reason when Professor Herbert asked me to give the lecture anyway. I said to him a week ago, I don't know if I can, but maybe it's a good thing that I am, because I think the world needs to hear what's happening. And again, if I need to run, please understand that missiles are being fired throughout the country today as well. I'm now going to come to the topic. Social work. First of all, I want to make it very clear that when I'm talking about secondary traumatization and all these concepts, it's not only for social workers, but we are here in a social work context. We've got a lot of first response fighters out there who are experiencing traumatization, maybe even more than the social workers. But this lecture, I'm going to focus on social workers. And the biggest question is, how do we find the light? Maybe I can tell you that one of the amazing things is that we don't have enough social workers at the moment, or mental health practitioners in our services, because the magnitude of this event was never thought anything like this could happen. So the social workers are volunteering together with the official social workers. We're all out there. Why are we out there? How are we finding the light? What are we doing? Earlier you were talking about collective childhood and memories. I'm talking about collective trauma. I'm even talking about an effect where we're being, as social workers, doubly exposed, because on the one hand, as I just said to you, during this lecture, now I had to run for shelter because I'm having missiles bombed at me. Israel's a small country. Everybody knows everybody to some degree. So I don't think there's one family in Israel that doesn't know someone. It might be a closer relation, it might be a further relation, but we've all got the stories from down south, while at the same time we're having missiles shot at us. And when we're talking about collective trauma, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about a trauma that's affecting an entire society. It's causing fear and horror. As much as I'm used to the sirens going off, I was so involved in listening to your very, very, Olga and Yulia, your very interesting, your lecture, that I was with you. I wasn't on alert. I was with you, and suddenly I heard the sirens. My phone gives me a signal. My phone suddenly starts giving me all these colors. I jumped because we're also at the moment, our lives are being disrupted. Work's been disrupted. Our children aren't going to school. Universities aren't even a question. Family gatherings, social activities, pleasure activities, it's all been disrupted. And yet, we're still finding the light. So let's try have a look at the positive and the negatives of being a social worker in such, maybe you can help me find the word, because I haven't found the word. We're still in it. Such a unbelievable and horrific. There's many words. Maybe if I give the same lecture in a few months' time, I'll find the actual word. But we're still finding the light. So first of all, let's have a look at mental health professionals who are exposed to indirect exposure due to traumatic experiences. Again, I'm talking here, it's a bit of a double talk, because on the one hand, as you understand, I'm having missiles shot at me, but on the other hand, I wasn't down south. So when I'm thinking of the really traumatic experiences, I'm talking about our civilians who were down there. And again, at this party of 3,000 younger adults, more or less, they were from all over the country. They weren't only people who were living from down south. So we're talking about indirect exposure to the traumatic experiences of another individual that's been recognized as an occupational risk to the mental health of helping professionals. When Professor Herbert and I discussed this in the beginning, I was telling him about experiences of working with rape victims and hearing the constant stories of the rape victims and how these affect us. At the moment, as I said, I'm going to direct this lecture on what's happening today in October 2023. According to Figley in 1995, who was the one who actually brought in the concept, he says that we have an ethical obligation to ensure that mental health professionals are warned of these risks, that they are aware of these risks, that they understand that by giving or by sharing the gruesome details, the poisonous details of all these traumatic events, they themselves are at risk. There are many different concepts that have been constructs that have been discussed in the literature. Professor Herbert, I think you also referred to burnout, which is another concept, but I didn't want to take too much time, so I'm not going to relate to burnout. I'm going to relate to vicarious traumatization and secondary traumatic stress. These concepts often overlap. They're often used interchangeably, but in order to maybe bring out the message a little bit stronger, I'm going to, for the purpose of this lecture, I'm going to separate between the two concepts. So when we're talking about vicarious traumatization, we're talking about negative changes in cognitive schemas of the social worker. I'm going to refer to social workers due to the indirect exposure to the traumatic experience of others, and it's world assumptions about themselves, how they perceive themselves, about other people, about the world, about perceptions of trust and safety. These changes that happen, they psychological changes that happen to the personality of the social worker, changes in self-identity, changes in worldview, in spirituality, in feelings of self-competence, coming from the belief that the world is dangerous. If you look at our situation today, as social workers, it's a little bit difficult to see the world as not a dangerous place when I'm sitting here giving a lecture and I'm having missiles thrown at me. The fear of terrorists inside the country is something that we're hearing about all the time. And as I said, as social workers, in many ways, we're getting double exposure because obviously we are hearing what's happening in the country. I myself just ran to shelter from a missile. And we're hearing the gruesome accounts of our clients. If I look at secondary traumatization or secondary traumatic stress, which was a concept which was already described by Figley in 1995, we're discussing symptoms of distress and behaviors following indirect exposure to trauma experienced by others. And these symptoms mirror those of post-traumatic stress disorder. We know that the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders of 2013, the DSM-5, brought in a new category of trauma and stress-related disorders, which included defining PTSD symptom clusters as the re-experiencing, such as flashbacks, avoidance of stimuli which are associated with the trauma, such as places or people or events that remind them of the trauma. They introduced a new cluster of negative cognitions and mood, which include negative thoughts about oneself, about other people, about the world, a lot of feelings of self-blame, a lot of negative emotions. And then, of course, there's the cluster of arousal, which are talking about exaggerated started response, which, honestly, while I was very involved in Olga and Yulia's lecture, and I was enjoying it, and suddenly my phone started beeping and sirens started going off. Honestly, I jumped. That's a startled response. Can you? So if we look at the risk factors of who is going to, which social workers are at risk of developing or VS or STSS, research, although there are often, or there are some studies which have shown different effects, but overall, I'm going to give a general picture. We're talking about mental health professionals of a younger age who've had less experience, who've had unprocessed traumatic experience in themselves. And when I say unprocessed traumatic experiences, I'm saying that they haven't worked on them. They haven't. Sometimes we think that we can self-heal through our clients. We can't self-heal through our clients. First, we need to self-heal, and then we can go to our clients. Current stress, I'm not sure what that's saying about us social workers in Israel right now. Sense of danger, once again. And emotional regulation, the way in which we are able to regulate our reactions. As I said, when my phone started buzzing and I started hearing sirens, I jumped. But then I said, okay, I need to leave the lecture. And I apologize. Olga and Julia, I really wanted to listen to the end of it, but I can't. I need to now find a safe place that I can be in. I need to wait for the amount of time that the army tells me to wait, and then I can come back and I can continue. So there's also the aspect of self-regulation. If we look on the side of the organization that we're working in, and I think this is very important because I think the organizations need to understand, if we look back at Figley, I said at the beginning, he said that there's an ethical obligation to avoid these effects. So if we look at all the organization risk factors, we're looking at the caseload, how many clients we're dealing with, the type of cases, the lack of diversity. I even remember when I was working with victims of trauma, of sexual trauma, our organization tried to, every case is traumatic, but tried to make the cases so that they were equalized between all the workers in terms of the intensity of them, the work conditions, the way the workers are related to, if there's place to have a cup of coffee, little things which make a big difference. Unclear job definition is definitely a risk factor, where the social worker's not sure where they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to be. Sometimes there's different organizations that are working together and it's unclear who needs to be where. Lack of supervision. I cannot stress this point enough. Please write this point down. When we are working with trauma victims, I think in any case, if we're working as social workers, we need supervision. We need professional supervision. We cannot keep all these stories and all these dilemmas that we're dealing with by ourselves. Supervision is a critical aspect of avoiding the bad effects or the bad impacts or the adverse impacts of working with trauma victims. And lack of support from colleagues is very, very important. One of the things that we're doing today is at a certain hour, we're meeting and we're having lunch together. It might seem like it's a ridiculous thing, but it's not. That's what's helping us get through the day. If you're working at an organization with trauma, with rape victims, between each client, have a cup of coffee with a colleague. It makes such a difference. How do we prevent all the adverse effects of working with trauma? So if we look at the side of us, of the mental health professionals, one of the ways is creating a balance between our professional and our personal life. We need limits. We need to know, okay, this is my work and this is my home and this is my personal life. We can't be there all the time, because if we're there all the time, we are going to start developing symptoms of PTSD. We need social support networks outside the organization, family, friends, whatever it may be, religious activities, sports activities. Social support is a huge factor. Maintaining a physical balance. What do I mean by that? Sleeping. That's a big issue today in Israel, because we're not sleeping. And when we eventually do fall asleep, we get woken up by sirens and then try go back to sleep. It's not that easy. But yes, we need to sleep. We need to eat a balanced diet. A lot of us don't feel like eating. Well, there's two sides to it. There's the overeating as a result, or the undereating. We need to try remain a balanced diet. Sport. We need to find ways to relax and relieve stress. It could be through sport, yoga, reading a book, listening to music, mindfulness, meditation, quality time with family and friends, a cup of coffee with a friend. These have been empirically found to prevent the adverse effects. On an organizational level, we can look at the opposite of what I said previously: individual and group training and supervision. And when I'm talking about training, I'm talking about, well, I've written it afterwards, but informing caregivers about the potential consequences of trauma work. They need to know that there are adverse consequences. Exactly as Figley said, it's our ethical duty to train our workers. Peer support, which is what I said, clear job definition, as you can see, it's the exact opposite of what I said previously. Legitimization of the difficulties. Yes, it's difficult. It's difficult. It's difficult today to work with people who have endured such horrific events. We need to be able to say that these stories are horrific. And I think Professor Herbert, who we've known each other for, correct me, Professor Herbert, around 2 years, am I right? I've lost track. Something like that. I think you've seen how this event has affected how I'm feeling right now. So we need to be able to say, yes, this is a very, very extreme situation. Client diversity, if we're working in an organization, is very important. And something for the organization to take into account is it's very important to focus on successes, to give positive feedback to the workers. That is crucial. So why do we do this? Why are we choosing this amazing, which I think, profession of social work? I have to tell you that I've been working as a social worker for many, many years, and I've always loved the profession. With everything that's going on right now in my country, I love the profession even more. I'm proud to be a social worker because we have positive effects of working with trauma survivors. We develop interpersonal skills. We've got an increased appreciation of human resilience. We get satisfaction from seeing clients' growth. And maybe the biggest word that should be here, which isn't, but I'll say it, is meaning, significance of being a part of the recovery process. I'd like to end off my speech by a prayer for all those who were murdered, abused, raped, and kidnapped on the 7th of October. Please help us bring them back home. Thank you.
Dr. Lee, only briefly, so thanks for your part, okay? I think that we will come back maybe with the short feedback to your lecture, but please, let's continue, because I think that's very good relation with the Karina Melnik. Next, a little bit from another perspective, but will be good with all the feedback from you too in this moment, okay?
Professor Herbert, I need to apologize. As I explained to you before, I need to apologize because I need to leave the meeting right now. Karina, I apologize. We also met.
I just feel moved by the significant challenges you are currently facing, and I want to express you my profound sympathy. It's totally understandable if you need to go.
I remember we met in Jan, and you were telling about your experiences in Ukraine. I hope that we get to meet again soon, and thank you very much for having me here. And I'll be in contact with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We take your lecture to our social workers in Krakow, and I think not only in our city. It was really valuable. Thanks from my heart, and I think it was absolutely in the point. Thanks a lot. Stay safety, and we will in the contact, okay? I believe that we meet once again like in Milano, in Niere in the future.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, and I hope to see you all soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. So I guess I can continue anyway. It's really nice to see you, all my colleagues, in one room here in a small screen. As Dr. Lee already mentioned, as a Ukrainian, I'm actually aware of the devastating effect of the war, which left an incredible mark on my worldview as well. However, my background, both as a half-Polish citizen and a dedicated social worker, has also exposed me to the horrific realities of humanitarian crises and drawing attention to the urgent need to address the secondary trauma experienced by the staff of social work organizations who selfishly strive to provide assistance in such difficult circumstances. Today, I'm honored to present a research that delves into the often overlooked issue of secondary trauma and its impact on the staff of social welfare organizations, but also a phenomenon of hospitality, which took place in Europe, but especially in Poland. Now I need to turn on my presentation as well. So since February 24, 2022, more than 10.5 million people, refugees from Ukraine, have crossed the Polish border, and the government estimates that Polish families have hosted 1.6 million Ukrainian refugees in their homes since the invasion. The story of our study begins on the first day of the escalation on February 24. I had a flight to Kyiv from Barcelona in that day. I was in Erasmus in Barcelona and intended to return to Ukraine because I always wanted to live, work, and create in my country, but it didn't happen. 21st of February. Now, thankfully, finally, I'm in Ukraine, but it still took me a year to arrive here. And in that day, February 24th, I used to not believe in any warnings. For example, my best friend, she's Ukrainian. She was very uptight all the time. But, I thought that the world couldn't get any crazier than after COVID. Unfortunately, I was wrong. And the first reflections on what was going on were after months. Then, together with Hubert Kashinsky, we wondered what was going on and how we as social workers must behave in this. So after a period of overload due to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, social assistance workers are being involved in mitigating the consequences of the migration crisis, and it should be empathized that this type of activity was something practically completely new for Polish society. And as well, it was new for Polish institutions because social work with refugees was practically non-existent. And there were no nationwide good practices in organizing institutional support for refugees. Thus, research reflection on the factors that triggered the widespread social mobilization of assistance for Ukrainian citizens, as well as the process of resilience built up in social assistance institutions, becomes particularly important. And on April 27, we held our first event, an open space conference on the topic of philosophy of health, where we considered how to connect the brain to the heart. And after that, we initiated at the Institute of Sociology of the Jagiellonian University in April 2022 research on the Polish phenomenon of hospitality, and continued from March 2023 as part of the Social Welfare Institutions, a Trauma-Informed Approach project, which is a part of the Behaviour in Crisis Lab of the Jagiellonian University. So the research problem set out by us concerned the identification of factors that have been responsible for the state of exceptional Polish hospitality towards refugees from Ukraine, and the role that social assistance played in this process. The study uses qualitative methodology based on two focus groups. The first focus group made it possible to collect opinions from people who had various experiences, like personal and professional, related to helping Ukrainians after the first 2 months of providing assistance. So the study in the first group took place in mid-May 2022. And the second focus group made it possible to collect opinions from social workers who had experience helping Ukrainians in direct contact, so-called frontline workers. And the information was collected after 14 months of work in special conditions to counteract in crisis situation. So the study in the second group took place in mid-April 2023. And Krakow social assistance workers responding to the humanitarian crises caused by Russian aggression against Ukraine incurred high emotional costs related to unprecedented exposure to stress related to organizing support for refugees, and help provided at previously unknown levels, like a problem, physical, team, organizational competence, was associated with the activation of the sense of mission in the involved employees, and sometimes the experience of participating in war events. This, in turn, facilitated the smoothness with which professional activity could use the private resources of employees and their families or loved ones. And two key elements three key elements were playing a vital role. And the first element, you can see it was a high level of social emotions. Secondly, that Poland's collective memory of World War II and efforts to reduce historical disputes between Poles and Ukrainians helped unite people during the crisis. And also, thirdly, consistent media coverage and political condemnation of Russian aggression provided strong public support. During the humanitarian crisis, a general national aid mobilization occurred, driven by the psychological helper syndrome among social assistance workers. What is more important, women's roles in aid organizations are also crucial and must be recognized. And the media often overlooked the contributions of social workers, highlighting a broader issue. However, it's important to remember and to emphasize this big role which social workers are doing every day. And for sure, as Dr. Lee mentioned, social work supervision is essential for professional support
and shaping aid organizations' preparedness policies. It should focus on hands-on crisis experience, equipping workers with necessary skills, and improving overall preparedness. So, in conclusion, recognizing the importance of collective memory, media support, and the helper syndrome is key to improving preparedness for humanitarian disasters. And social work supervision is a crucial element in ensuring readiness for future crises. Thank you. This is all from my side.
I think that would make a sense and put together those two presentations. The common elements is absolutely the supervision. But for me, of course, when I'm thinking about the presentation by Dr. Lee, that's a crucial point. It's not only supervision, but undefinition of the role of the social workers. And now we have a time that during the time of deregulation of the definition of our profession. I'm looking for instance, our colleague that represent the law as a lawyer and the psychologist. It's an absolutely clear definition. And now I think the social policy play the role how to make a deconstruction of our role. Yeah, and I think that's another concept why our personality have an emotional problem, how to deal with the traumatic situation. It's absolutely important findings from myself. Dear Karina, and dear all, I think that do you agree with me that we need a 7 minutes of break, okay? The 7 minute break, because it's another kind to be on the conference and another kind is to be in the camera, okay? And the next part will be a little bit about the future, and I think that please stay with us if someone is in the online, on the streaming, but it will be focus on the future concept, international perspective, because I believe that in this moment we need really seriously the authorities of research authorities, about, I don't know, the politician authorities to protect the people. Really, we have to make a balance and build as powerful attitudes and the strong professionalist. Yeah, Karina, if you'd like to stay with us and be after the break, will be a great pleasure for us. If not, I understand, because it's another style of present. Okay, thanks, Karina. Okay, what kind of friend have you?
I will join you in YouTube and will follow your stream. But here in WebEx, I guess I will drop the call.
Make a comments in the email today in the evening or tomorrow during the day. Fine. So sorry that a little bit pressed you, but I think that we need a break, okay? Fine, definitely. Good 7 minutes of break. Okay. Second part after the short break, and we are together again. And now another perspective, psychological approach, and the question why we are ready to help others. Yeah, in the light of the research. Anna Podczas, please, your time.
Thank you very much for inviting me for this very interesting event. Today I would like to say a few words about why do people engage in helping behavior. And my short lecture will consist of three parts. First, I would like to shortly say about very classical psychological studies and research regarding why people engage in helping behavior. Then I would like to shortly say about situation related to war in Ukraine and influx of Ukrainian refugees to Poland. And finally, I would like to present you with very recent research from our lab, from Behaviour in Crisis Lab, about why people engaged in help towards Ukrainian refugees. Okay, so one of the questions that comes to our mind when we think about helping behavior is when helping evolves. So actually, research shows that even before they are 1 year old, infants begin to respond to distress in other children. And some spontaneous prosocial behavior emerges between the ages of 1 and 2 years. So in general, people are aroused by the distress of others, and it has a biological and evolutionary basis. So even some researchers state that humans are inherently empathic creatures. They are prepared biologically to feel empathy towards others. Okay, so who do we help? Who are the people that we are most likely to help? So research shows that people are more likely to help others who are similar to them rather than those who are dissimilar. And this is because we can feel a common identity with people who are similar to us. We feel that we have a common fate with them, and the sense of we-ness emerges. And especially we are most likely to help people from our group when we feel threatened. So in times of all the situations related to crisis, like wars, humanitarian crisis, collapse of democracy, and so on, these are the circumstances under which we are most likely to help other people. And finally, why do we help? So there are several factors that psychologists discuss of why we engage in helping behavior, and it's related to social learning, social norms, emotions, and individual characteristics. So when it comes to social learning, in general, people will be more likely to engage in helping actions that are rewarded and less likely to engage in helping actions that are punished. So some research shows that when people are rewarded with their helping behavior, in the next occasion, 90% of them engage in helping behavior again. However, when they engage in help behavior and the action was in some way punished, only 45% continue with helping behavior, so twice as less as compared to the first situation. And people not only learn about what are the consequences of helping by themselves, but also by observing others. So, for example, as it was mentioned by Karina, when people, for example, learn in the television about the consequences of helping, so they see that people are prized for helping, that they are rewarded for helping, they are more likely to help themselves because they are learning from others what are the consequences of helping behavior. Therefore, it was very important, for example, during the war, to see the media coverage of people helping others. Also, it is very important the role of social norms. So norms define what people ought to do and they guide our behavior. And failure to satisfy these obligations of others make us feel bad and may generate criticism from others. So when all the other people are engaged in helping behavior in some way, and we are the only ones in our circle that are indifferent for this problem, we will probably feel bad, and other people will criticize us for not being engaged. So to escape such situation, people also engage in helping behavior. So one such a norm of helping is equity norm. So in general, people want to believe that we live in a just world where good things happen to good people and where bad things happen to bad people. And unfortunately, situations such as, for example, war, show us that war is not a just place. However, as I mentioned here, such a norm can be a double-edged sword, because people may be motivated to help others who have been treated unfairly, to make the world fair and just again, to make themselves feel that they live in a world that is just because those who need help are being helped. However, when help is very demanding or it is even impossible, people still want to hold this view that the world is a just place, and often they will devalue an innocent victim because they are motivated to see the world as just. So they will solve this cognitive dissonance of seeing that people are in unjust situations by blaming them that they are responsible for what happened to them. And also, people are more likely to help those who are dependent on them. So, for example, people are more likely to help people with disabilities and those who are in need. But again, there is a but to this sentence, because people are reluctant to help others whose own behavior caused their dependency. So, for example, there is research showing that people who are suffering from AIDS are more likely to get help and to get sympathy from other people when they were when their disease comes from the blood transfusion problems, rather than, for example, when they engage in risky behaviors. So, in general, the perceived controllability of a person's problem is major determinant of whether we will feel toward this person. So, their own decision to become dependent toward others is important here. And also, people who experience negative states, negative emotions, are motivated to reduce them. And when we see other people suffering, we, of course, feel negative emotions. We feel sadness, we feel guilt that we are in a better situation compared to others. And through socialization and experience, we have learned that helping others can make us feel good. So it is a form of regulating our own emotions. And indeed, research shows that helping others can perceive our self-esteem. We can feel as better people when we help others. And it also heightens our sense of integrity. And also, there is a very important role of altruism, because the previous reasons that I enlisted for helping people in need were a bit egoistic, because I mentioned that people help to regulate their emotions, to avoid being criticized by other people, and so on and so forth. However, there is also a group of people that help, and it cannot be explained by the reasons that I mentioned before. So people who help just because they want the situation of others to be improved. And this situation, this form of helping is called altruism. So helping without expecting anything good to happen to us, just being concentrated on the person that is in need. And indeed, research shows that helping is especially rewarding for empathetically concerned people, and empathically concerned people help even when they will not learn of the benefits of their aid. So even when they know that they will not see consequences of their help, that no one will learn about that, the fact that they help, they are still about to help others, because they are not concentrated on the consequences for their own. And also, empathically concerned people feel just as good when they learn that others have help as when they help on their own. So basically, these people feel good just because they know that the person in need was helped, even when they did not contribute to this help on their own. So basically, they are just concentrated on the consequences of help. So the person in need is being helped, rather than the process and consequences for themselves. And this was a short introduction of basics of psychology of helping behavior. And now I wanted to move to the situation of Ukrainian refugees in Poland. So basically, who are the refugees? So the situation, of course, dramatically changed after February 2022. In the 90s and early 2000s, the number of immigrants in Poland was about 100,000 people. And these were mainly people from former Soviet Union looking for job opportunities in Poland. Then after 2014, many people from Ukraine decided to move to Poland, and these were about 2 million people who moved to Poland. However, after February 2022, about 3 million people from Ukraine seek refuge in Poland. So during several weeks, Poland, from nation that was not having many refugees, became one of the biggest, one of the most important country in Europe having refugees in their society. So why Poles helped? So 70 to 74% of Poles were involved in providing help. This is really, really high number that I think no one expected to happen. And many people were concerned about how this situation of Ukrainians coming to Poland will affect attitudes toward Ukrainians. because many people feared that, for example, people will be scared about losing their jobs because of Ukrainian refugees coming to market of work in Poland, to job market. And there are also other peoples who were concerned about our common history with Ukrainian people, which is not easy. However, this all worries were not actually didn't happen, because as we can see from research, people had very, very good attitudes towards refugees and toward Ukrainians in general in Poland. So 92% of Poles said they would accept Ukrainian in workplace and place of residence, and 87% as family member. And this was a significant increase compared to the situation before the war. So the coming of Ukrainian refugees to Poland actually increased already quite good attitudes toward Ukrainian people. And why Poles helped? One of the reasons was that majority of surveyed Poles believes that Ukrainians are very similar to them. More about this was investigated by a team of Professor Małgorzata Kosowska from Behaviour in Crisis Lab and from Jagiellonian University. And her team conducted several studies on helping Ukrainian refugees and the reasons why Polish people decided to help. So, first study was conducted just after Russian invasion in Ukraine. It was conducted between 11th and 17th March 2022. And participants were asked about their helping activities during the previous week. And they responded to questions regarding measures of prospective fear, so fear of being invaded by Russia, their perceived closeness toward refugees from Ukraine, and norms of helping. So, in general, participants responded to questions whether they helped Ukrainians in the previous week, whether they are afraid that Russia will invade Poland, whether they feel close to refugees from Ukraine, and whether people in their close environment, how many people in their close environment are actually helping refugees. And the research showed that all these three factors, so perceived closeness, anticipatory fears, and social norms, demonstrated associations with helping behavior. However, also Professor Kosowska and colleagues were interested whether this remains true over time. So not only in the first wave just after the war, which was shown in the previous study, but also during the upcoming weeks after the war. So in the study too, there were participants who were asked about their help during the previous weeks on 4 occasions. So starting from March 2022, and then there were 4 measurements of helping behavior. And what this research showed is that the willingness to assist war refugees decreases over time, which is quite common experience for helping behavior, that it becomes less prominent with time. And this prospective fear, so the fear of being invaded by Russia, predicted helping only in the first wave of study, but as the time passed, its impact on helping diminished. So it was not enough to fear that we will be invaded by Russia to maintain helping behavior. And the sense of closeness toward refugees and social norms of helping made distinct contributions to the continuity of helping. So those who felt close towards refugees and those who still had in their environment other people who were still helping over time, and it significantly impacted help behavior, and closeness compensated for the decline of fear. So as you can see in this graph, those who were low in prospective fear, so those on the left of the x-axis, they normally the help would decline because they were not threatened anymore. However, when they felt close to refugees from Ukraine, they maintained their help even though the fear was not high anymore. So to sum it up, why do we help in general? We help in general because we learn it's an appropriate behavior, because it's a norm in our environment, so because others are helping as well, because this way we deal with emotions, and because we are altruistic people who just want to other people's situations to be improved. And why did we Poles help Ukrainian refugees? So first factors is because we felt close to them. Secondly, because helping was common in our close environment. And finally, because at the beginning we felt fear regarding Russian invasion. So these findings from Małgorzata Kosowska and colleagues, underscore the importance of social identity processes, such as social norms, fear, and closeness, in aiding war refugees, and it can be utilized to improve and refine responses to other humanitarian crises. I wanted to thank you very much for listening to me, and I wanted to encourage you to visit our website of Behaviour in Crisis Lab to be up to date with what happens in our team, and also our Facebook website, BCry Lab on Facebook. Thank you very much for it.
Perfect, but not in this moment. So sorry, not this moment because we have another presentation.
Yes.
Okay?
At some
After
point.
the presentation, the people can look to the website
Of course.
looking for the Behaviour in Crisis. And the closeness is very important. We said in the social work activity that you would like to be ready to the action. You have to be closeness to the people, to touch the people. And I think this is one of the elements, maybe not a lot of sophisticated, but I agree with the outcomes, general outcomes of the nearest to me is outcomes of Małgorzata Kosowska and the team. And then now we still be in the Behaviour in Crisis Lab. Professor Katarzyna Ornacka, Kasiu, what kind of news have you? What we can understand our activity from the concentration lager in Plaszów and preparing students to the disasters situation through a situation Ukrainian, COVID and actual, and Dr. Lee said, and psychological perspective, what we can do. Kasia.
Okay, thank you.
Your presentation, yes? We are waiting for your... Yes, we have one guest, but the first will be your presentation. First will be the presentation. The healthy SOAR is a secret. I said 2 hours ago that it's a secret name. What does it mean, SOAR? SOAR, okay?
Yes, thank you very much. We are definitely have a lot in common when it comes to Behaviour in Crisis Lab. And we also are very much connected today because we join to a certain extent past and future, actually, and we'll be talking about future. And as you mentioned, the topic of our presentation is Healthy SOAR, Trauma-Informed Organization, and some recommendations from research we conducted within the Behaviour of Crisis Lab. But following Brené Brown, who says that we are the map makers and the travelers, me and Jakub will show you the journey from the beginning to the place we are now in a nutshell. So very, very briefly. Okay. So we started from social welfare institutions seen through the prism of a trauma-informed approach. And we wanted to explore actually the organizational change process, thinking of these institutions through the implementation of this approach. At the beginning, we were aware that this approach, a trauma-informed approach, is a profound paradigm shift in knowledge, perspective, attitudes, and skills that continues within time to deepen and unfold over time, actually. And at the same time, we understood this approach as a kind of a continuum of implementation where organizations, in our case, social welfare organizations, previously called institutions, where they move through different stages. So the continuum begins with becoming trauma aware and moves to trauma sensitive, to trauma responsive, to being fully trauma informed. And in the very beginning, we were very attached to this approach because it is commonly understood, this approach, as a way of organizational functioning which does not, and this is very important, does not re-traumatize the individuals, groups, and recipients of social support. However, our thinking about its relevance also has some other aspects. So we were aware, and we became aware actually, that without this approach being present in the organization, it will not be possible to implement other approaches. For example, service user approach or involvement, right? We wanted to include service users as important collaborators who could support professionals. So first of all, we'd like to protect social services workers from secondary trauma. Second of all, we wanted to involve service users, as I said, as important collaborators. And then we also, being aware that this style of leading an organization is protective, right? Is very much protective. And thanks to or owing to implementing it into social welfare institutions, we would be able to help increase the effectiveness of services wherever and whatever they are by raising awareness of trauma. And of course, all of that was very much related to developing a common language and framework for discussion, plus to implementing basic principles of trauma-informed approaches into the organizational settings. But within time, we a little bit changed our direction. It happened after a pilot study we conducted in Krakow with social services workers who, were employed in various local organizations, institutions, and who were, as Dr. Lee mentioned, double exposed. It was in indirect exposure to work with people in trauma. So they shared their experience with us of what they learned from COVID-19 and Russian invasion in Ukraine. And we said to ourselves that our priority is to respond to the needs of social welfare organizations because we knew that they were directly confronted with crisis. So we also decided to prepare something, to design a project, a concept that might go beyond the trauma-informed approach. It was also because this approach has become part of an international discourse, and a lot have been written about it. So we wanted to came up with something new, but at the same time, or what is more important, something that will be adjusted to the actual situation. So the social services workers gave us evidence, and based on the evidence, we knew that the changes in the organization were, necessary. So we wanted to, apart from or within a project we started working on, we wanted to develop recommendations for emergency preparedness policy for potential future humanitarian disasters. As you can see on this slide, there are 3 levels of analysis I will be talking in a minute. So, healthy SOAR. You were very curious about what this name means and what is covered or hidden within this name. So, healthy SOAR was conceived after thorough, continuous discussions and reflections. And healthy SOAR means Healthy Social Welfare Organizations Alliance for Resilience. And we looked at the organizations from 3 levels, or we can just analyze these organizations from 3 perspectives, right? One of them is individual perspective or individual level. When we think about staff, people employed, social services workers or frontline workers. Another one is organization, which we mean organizational level and administrative procedures that exist. And then the 3rd level of our analysis refers to legal framework, so legal conditions, about which Jakub will be talking a little later. And there's also one very important word in the title of this project, healthy. So we put emphasis on healthy because we understand it through the prism of structural and processual components. So the structural component of healthy means some principles that protect social services workers from vicarious traumatization. And here you can see all of them. They are safety, trust, worthiness and transparency, peer support, collaboration and mutuality, empowerment, voice and choice, and cultural, historical, and gender issues. But of course, apart from these main principles, when we think about structural component, we can talk about building a culture of supervision in the organization. We can talk about recovery programs in the organization. Also, coming back to the supervision, we can talk about specific trauma-oriented supervision, but also we can discuss specific procedures that regulate the cooperation both within, so inside the organization, and outside the organization, which means around the environment, especially in emergency situations. We can also talk about some elements of law and budget reserves that are distributed to people, especially in a crisis situation. When it comes to the second component, the processual component, it stresses communication aspects, referring to inside and outside of the social welfare organizations. So as you can see, we focus on communication, but especially we focus on how communication takes place in these 3 areas, the individual, organizational, and legal, and what it should be like to build epistemic trust. This is the concept that derives from clinical psychology, and we think that by implementing the model to our research, we'd like to capture epistemic trust communication, as we think and believe that it may increase the level of resilience in humanitarian disasters. But in addition to this, we think that this concept would allow us to understand various mechanisms that are present in social welfare organizations and to identify resources within the institution that, of course, would protect social services workers from secondary trauma, from vicarious traumatization, and burnout. However, there's one thing I need to add, because we are still thinking about certain details concerning our project, and because our key agents of change are social services workers employed in social welfare organizations, we think that it might be more important to us creating space for open communication and healthy work culture, there is communication that might increase the level of trust between partners, but also the communication that might engage them deeply and in a creative way around issues of concern to them. So what I'm saying is that we'd like to move a little bit into a little bit different direction, but not as much different as when it comes to the epistemic trust communication. And we'd like to frame the trust-influencing communication model as applying to social welfare organizations, especially workers, and to vulnerable groups as service recipients. I might add that workers, social services workers, are defined by, we understand them as service providers, whereas vulnerable groups are defined and understood by us as service recipients. But of course, what is of our attention is the communicative linking channel from service providers to service recipients in the context of intercultural communication. And of course, the challenges embedded in this. So, for example, some biases that might occur from a service provider to a service recipient, and of course, some strategies to self-regulate biases and stereotypes to make crisis communication more effective. So, we believe that the trust-influencing communication might enable social learning in a changing context, and of course might allow individuals to benefit from these contexts and this environment. Also, what is of our attention is that social welfare organizations play the central role in the communication between the state and citizens. So this is why we think that this model of trust-influencing communication is very important to implement. Of course, we do recognize some barriers here that might impede or disturb communication, especially in situations of social tension related to crisis or humanitarian disasters. So, for example, fake news in the media or information bubbles or populist narratives that might activate. But no matter how many barriers we can recognize, we are very much ready to follow our project, to follow our concept, in which we view, again, let me stress it, in which we view social welfare organizations as the key element of communication between the state and citizens. And one more thing before I give the floor to Jakub, is that we want to integrate this model as a recommendation into the organization, both to the inside of the organization and to the outside organization, because we think, we are certain, almost certain actually, that the model of communication based on trust will enable the organizations to promote vicarious resilience among social services workers through recovery experiences and organizational support, through enhanced empowerment in the workplace. So some factors that Dr. Lee mentioned in her presentation. So enable to promote vicarious resilience rather than provoke vicarious traumatization among professionals. So from me, that's all. Now, the floor is yours, Jacob.
Now we can move, thank you very much. Now we can move to the third pillar of our project, which is the legal perspective. we covered some legal system from the Europe, all over the Europe. We've got the different perspective from so-called old member states of European Union, the countries which are only associated with European Union, and also the Polish perspective on this matter. And the first thing that have to be stressed that since we want to conduct a comparative analysis, what have to be stressed that we work at the theoretical plate right now, because we are seeking for the tools for the readiness. We don't have them. I will move to it, but we're waiting for the presentation. So we want to conduct a comparative analysis, and since the comparative analysis would be very hard to be conducted without one model and one goal, and we are aware that the social welfare organization is only the theoretical concept from the legal point of view, because in the social work not only the public funded but also the private actors are involved. That's why we want to give such models of such an organization, and those models will serve as an environment for our study. So that's one thing, that's one result which we are seeking. It's a social welfare organization which is founded by the public law. We of course recognize the necessity of engagement and participation of private actors also during the emergencies, during the crises, but we believe that the supervision and oversight, the competence of supervision and oversight must be vested with the public authorities. And also, that's only, like a bullet point, we want to establish the Chief Resilience Officer, the legal framework for it. Of course, the Chief Resilience Officers are operating within the private sector, but we are thinking about it also at the in a public funded authorities. And of course, I know that the problematic is, the topics are today very hard, and it seems a little bit childish, but I'm using this slide in work with my undergrads, and I want you to give the perspective, the legal perspective. From the legal point of view, especially the administrative lawyers, they will be interested only in those guys at the top of the slide, because that's the authority, that's the chief of agency, and they are vested with the competence. So normally we'll speak that when the social welfare organizations take action in the legal terms, the authority is in action. So we are only interested with the boss, let's say. But the boss, the chief of agency, have its bureaucratic apparatus, which is office, so it's organizational side, and also it's got the workers who act on behalf of the authorities. So from the procedural perspective, we have to have at least two types of procedures, which are external and internal one. So it will be atypical for me to analyze only the internal procedural perspective, but it's very important, as Dr. Lee, for example, mentioned, caseload, the problem of supervision and so on, it have to be covered by the law, but on the internal level. So we will be dealing mostly with the downside of the slide. So that's what is the most interesting for us. Another problem is the different legal regimes, and I mean not only the different nation laws, because as I mentioned, they are different to some degree, but also what does it mean from the legal perspective, the crisis. Sometimes crisis or emergency. Sometimes those states are recognized by law, and we've got the special, legal regimes like a martial state of emergency. But due to the not only political, but sometimes the legal requirements, the authorities are not keen to establish them. As for example was with this is one of the lessons from the COVID perspective, because in Poland, for example, we do not have the state of emergency. We've got some sort quasi states of emergency. We believe from the legal perspective, we want to establish the tool for the crisis, but to some degree, the social welfare organization will determine whether we are now in the crisis or not. It's not up to politicians, but it's up to the people who work at the front. So But on the other hand, the social welfare organization have to, act on the basis of law, because we've got the rule of law, we have to have the legal basis. So we have to introduce them with the legal tools, legal instruments. For example, to say we are now at the crisis, we've got the crisis situation, we have to apply special procedure for this point. And the procedural aspect. Normally the lawyers are interested in the outcome of the procedure. So what's the outcome? Is it the administrative decision? Is it a public service, and so on? And within the project, we want to deepen the idea of the procedure as a tool for communication and the tool for information gathering. So it's a very new perspective, and also we want to establish the network of authorities which will be involved in a crisis situation. So to speak, in the center always it would be the SWO, social welfare organization, but they have to communicate and cooperate with others. So we have to establish routes to communicate, routes to engage every possible actor in the crisis situation. And of course, this type of administrative procedure will have the transformative role. So we believe that via procedure we can establish new potential behaviors of social workers. So that's one thing. The second thing, that procedure have to observe the fundamental human rights. We have to respect the rights of social workers, and it is well established that the civil servants feel very comfort when they know the patterns. So of course we've got some well-known patterns from the day-to-day practice, but we have to modify them and put into the crisis situation. So what we want to do is to strike the balance between the flexibility and the formality of the procedure. And we've got some examples for it. I don't have time to elaborate on it, but I think that, for example, the reunion model rules will be the good starting point. And the last thing is the defensive role of procedure. Normally, I would say that administrative procedure, the basic reason why we got the administrative procedure is to defend the citizens from the abuse of power by the authorities. That's a normal part of the definition of administrative process or administrative procedure, if you like. But we think that during the crisis or during the emergency, there are other, objectives that have to be observed. The first one is that we have to defend the rule of law. The COVID lesson, the first COVID lesson was that the rule of law was in crisis during the pandemic. That's one thing. The second thing, that we have to defend the organization. So the organization have to run smoothly. So, for example, our colleagues from Kharkiv, in their short paper about the procedures regarding the social work during the war, they said we are working normally. Our organization is working. So it's very important to secure the flow of people, the flow of money, the all resources have to be in place in case of. So the part of the readiness is to be prepared. And of course, the social workers and society. So as Dr. Lee told us, the case flow, the supervision, and so on, it all have to be put in one procedure. So we have to have the procedure which addresses those issues. Thank you very much.
Really great. I think that it's so super fact. We have a 10 minutes officially we have a 10 minutes to the end of our meeting. But only one comment. Maybe it's not the politician correct, but I'm waiting for the next election in our country, because such a minister as you, as a minister of the self-welfare system in Poland, it will be really great, because it's a theoretical concept. We are waiting for the people who have a vision how to organize a concept in Poland. And now in Poland, we are looking for the new solution for our social welfare organization generally. But I think that it's really valuable. Thanks a lot. And we have you a David or not? David from Tel Aviv. I'm not sure. Yes, David. David, so sorry because our David. I would like to introduce the David from Tel Aviv. Is our project manager.
Yes.
And of course, we hope that you integrated every kind of our ideas. We work so hard since 3 hours. And David, okay, what's going on? Because really, we are on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's always. I feel like the ideas are really sort of getting compressed well, and I love hearing the integration. So really, as everybody can hear, this is really a very strongly interdisciplinary project with a wide variety of pillars. So I think certainly as far as that content wise, I'll sort of those things stand well where they are. I think if there's something I would add to all of that is a little bit more about the aspect related to interinstitutionality and certainly internationality. So one of the challenges that we're facing is that across countries we have a double challenge. So number one is that social welfare systems are really quite different from one country to another, to the point where there's even challenges in their definition. The function is the same, but as far as how it's operated is there's a large variety. But also, as I think probably existed throughout history, but we're definitely seeing very much these days, is that the operation of social welfare function goes well beyond the boundaries of the formal systems. And this is something that we are experiencing very clearly, and we want to see how we can integrate that more properly. So some examples probably that everybody here is aware of has to do with taking in refugees from Ukraine, where a lot of people took their own initiative and simply brought people into their home. And there was sort of this parallel development of the civil society enacting social welfare functions and social welfare system implementing that. And eventually, in a lot of cases, the cry for the central sort of guidance came from civil society asking for the social welfare system to integrate things well together. So this is something that we're looking into as far as how can we create this integration where the social welfare system is really connected to what citizens are doing and not functioning in opposition to it, and not functioning in parallel to it, but provide guidance and integration. So that's an important aspect. And this connects to what some of our experts in the project connect to the well-known social welfare approach of the ecological approach. So we're going from individuals to communities, but then we're going, and of course policy above all that, but we're connecting all that into sort of also the horizontal perspective, which we think is very important. The second thing about that is that what we're seeing as far as the international element here is there's a great opportunity, especially in the area of emergencies, in that emergencies, luckily, right, usually, except for the very, very important case of COVID, usually they occur in some places some of the time and not in all the places all the time, which absolutely puts greatly in the forefront the fact that social welfare organizations and in general anybody dealing with emergencies have to learn from each other, right? Because emergencies are only occurring at a certain level of intensity in different parts of the world at any given time. And if the people who have just experienced an emergency don't transmit that knowledge onward, then it sort of kind of just exists in the experiences of people in that location. So the aggregation of understanding and knowledge really requires a greater integration of experience, which is another thing that we're establishing sort of in our international approach to this project, which is indeed why the alliance or resilience is required. So I think that's just an additional element that we think is very valuable in this project. It's sort of it's part of one leg of it is in research, really like developing the understanding of how the ecological approach can be expanded horizontally, and then the other leg is really in sort of a more of a on the side of end users, stakeholders, and implementation of just the establishment of an alliance or a network, if you will. So like I said, our idea will take us forward to there.
I think this was great because it's elements of the philosophy of our concept. I think I see your presentation, short of course, thanks. I see the situation in the morning when I am looking to the mirror, and I see myself, because it's very closely to my definition what's going on here in horizon in the future. Because I think that this is important to have open channel for communication and open possibility to learn from each other, from the one to the second social welfare organization. Yeah, and because it's the school of resilience. And I think that I come back once again, like Jakub, that we discussed with Dr. Lee. It was not so easy, but it was a channel for communication, to have the knowledge from the sources, from the first hand, and not a closed the information. Normally, during the emergency, during the crisis, we close the border, yeah, and only the silence. But now we have another kind of possibility to use, for instance, new informatic tools to be in the contact. But of course, without the psychological approach about the epistemic trust communication, is impossible. Yeah. But I think that today we have a so perfect example how the epistemic trust communication can be realized in reality. Yeah, I think that's so great. So it's so perfect. Yeah, we have 3 minutes. It's a lot of the time, 3 minutes. And so sorry because we are only to be open for the communication. And please, if you have any kind of short comments, really about the feedback, how are you feeling? Because we have not the time to organize an open space, as I said to you three hours ago. But maybe it was very important for us to put a foundation for our thinking. And the next meeting, we can discuss together. Yeah, I think that I have called to our director for the academic support and organize next meeting and invite our partners. It's very good to have the regular discussion about the future of social welfare organization. Perfect. It's my comments. Stop. Who would like to take a voice?
Okay, so I'd like to make a short comment. I mean, 3 comments concerning... 3 short comments. One referring to past, another one to present, and the last one to future. So when it comes to the past and the voices presented by Olga and Julia, I'd like to say that I think that if we want to find a way back to ourselves and to one another, we need the language and the grounded confidence to both to tell our stories and be stewards of the stories we want to hear. And this is, from my perspective, the kind of a framework for meaningful connection. So this is one comment. Another one referring to present and very close to the meaning connection. I think that our priority is and interest is to map meaningful connection and the language of human experience. Because the connection is a kind of an energy that exists between people when they feel seen, when they feel heard and valued. And I think that we are the people who are able to see, to hear, and to value others, especially those who show us their courage and vulnerability, like Dr. Lee or even David, right? So because we think that and we understand vulnerability not as weakness, but the measure of courage. So plus one more thing, hope. I think that we need hope like air, and we know that it appears or it is developed not during the easy times or the more comfortable times, but through adversity and discomfort. So hope is very much needed, and I'd like to thank you very much, Dr. Lee and Karina and David, for all of you, actually, for sharing your stories, real stories and very difficult and painful stories with us. And when it comes to future, I think that we are very good team, international, professional team, dream team, and sky is the limit.
Yeah,
So thank you.
Fine, Kasia. Okay, I think it's okay to have a few minutes more, because if someone would like to edit something.
Maybe one.
Yeah, okay,
one
Jakub.
thing in connection what David told us, we hope that maybe from our perspective, from the European perspective, the European Union will be the answer for some difficulties in sharing the knowledge and learning from the past. So we also believe in the project. So that's one of the objectives, is to give some tool, not only for the national authorities, but also for the European Union as a whole. But that's the future, as you mentioned. So we'll see what will happen.
But I think that our name of the horizon is okay, because I think that you don't want to change the title from Healthy SOAR to Hope SOAR. Yeah, the Hope SOAR, the new name for the project. Okay, thanks, David. Of course, that I think that is I think that I believe they are ready to prepare the recommendations of the European Union. With you, with Dream Team, is okay. Ania, you, Julia Pawlikowska-Leuci maybe, or Olga Maciejewska.
From our side, I remember when we had the meeting when war started in Ukraine with Pnina Ron, also Lee. And I remember it's short comment from my side, just reflection which came to my mind. And they say to us like, oh, you have to be careful what is going on now, be strong, what is going on in your country, like next to your country, you have to be prepared. And we had this discussion about we are not prepared for trauma and what is going and what is coming to our country with working with people after trauma. And I think we are sitting here now after 2 years again, and I have to repeat, we are still not ready for talking about trauma, and we need to change our system. We need to improve it for this, and we have to get ready, because trauma is something what take years to come up sometimes. We are not talking about only trauma which happened just after events. We are talking about transgeneric trauma, which Pnina was always talking about. So just reflection that we are sitting here, and again, it's the same topic about working with traumatized people. And I would like to have opportunity to work with students also to talk about that. I hope I will have.
Yeah, as I think this is not the current trauma situation. There's a transgeneration transmission, but I think this is some new concept that this is the life, that the trauma is across the life. And the past, you said so very clear about the past, about the future, about actual situation. But of course, everything is rather that we live on a little bit on the past, a little bit in the future, a little bit now in the current situation, and everywhere we have a traumatic exposition. Because today, during the Ukrainian, sorry, Karina, correct me, before the Russian aggression and the migration to the Poland, we come back, discuss about the traumatic situation we remember from the Second War. And everything was it was actual situation. We afraid that the history is running again. Yeah, and I think that's right. And of course, I remember our meetings, and we said, you have to be careful. I said, okay, Karina, you have to be careful. And Pina said to me, Hubert, please be careful. Please buy the bottle of the water. And I think that's the generally. I think that it's very good that we have a place to discuss about really important things. Yeah, it's absolutely common challenge for society. And then I think that, of course, sometimes we are thinking, okay, it's only education about the Holocaust, but we need the education every kind of the place in Ukrainian. It will be the same concept of education, that we have to take the place with difficult heritage, yeah, and try to think, try to feel what does it mean, because it's not possible to go to the future without the past. And we need the tools, the concept of the work in Israel, in Ukrainian. Okay, stop for this moment. Without another countries, I think. Children of Zygmunt Bauman. Little bit sorry. Okay, fine. I think that it was really so hard afternoon for us. Olga, thanks a lot. Olga Maciejewska, Sociology Institute. Perfect. Julia Pawlikowska-Leuci. It was really grow up about our research. Perfect. Kasia Ornacka. I think this was excellent presentation. Really, it was fascinating that we discussed last 10, 14 days, and and I see as an amazing project. And I'm very happy that you have a lawyer on the board, as you said, and a lot of experts from European Union, because we really need the law, but not only the lawyer who define the detailed aspect what you should to do, what you have to do as a social worker, but how to organize our life, how to protect the people. It's a meaning of the law in my perspective. Thanks, Jakub. And of course, psychologist is absolutely perfect, as you see, that we need the support, we need the good research, we need the predictors of our behavior in the traumatic situation, and sometimes we need a distance. Absolutely, it was very good, as you said, the dream team, and David, of course, with the comments, and I trust that David take our ideas and put in the common coherent document, and will be really successful for the future. And we have Dr. Lee, we have Karina, a lot of the people, I think, that we evolved. And once again for Mr. Dominic from the Support Center of University, and Mr. Andrzej. I think that without the face, but please trust me that the man exists in real life. And thanks a lot, directors of the Centrum of Jagiellonian Support and so on. Okay, I'm so tired. And thanks myself.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great, yeah. Thanks a lot. It was really great. Fantastic. Thanks. Sure.
Thank you.